Welcome to a presentation from the Australian War Memorial. You're about to hear the recollections of some World War I veterans. Between them, they represent experiences of those soldiers who travelled to the battlefields of Gallipoli and France and returned to tell the tale. You'll hear the voice of Colonel James McKinlay, who, as a member of the AIF's 4th Divisional Signal Company, describes landing at Gallipoli, playing games with the Turks, and finally being shot. Angus John McGillivray, who was a stretcher-bearer in 29th Infantry Battalion, describes using a blanket for protection from bullets and shelling on the Western Front. Then you will hear Private Thomas Brain. Thomas was so young when he enlisted that he wasn't even fully grown when he went to the Western Front. He describes what happened when he returned to his family from the war.
Of course, we landed on Gallipoli on the 25th of April 1915. The convoy consisted of something like, or from memory, I think about 12 to 15 boats escorted by destroyers. And we anchored some, I should think, 5 or 6 miles off the shores of Gallipoli. We had very little instructions as to what we were to do, excepting that we were to, as signallers with the 2nd Brigade, our job was to keep in touch with the 4 battalions that were in our brigade and to lay cable to them and or keep signal communications with them. We landed in a little, we were offshore, I suppose, 5 or 6 miles, perhaps less, and we landed in one of the ship's boats. Now, the boats were manned by, well, British seamen. They were mostly cadets from some training school, I suppose, in England, and were sent out on these boats to handle the little ship's boats to take us ashore. When we landed, the brigade commander went in front of us and sort of led the way, and the battalions that had already landed had made their way towards, well, really in front of Lone Pine. Our section was really in the Lone Pine area. The funny thing about the Turk was this, that he in his training as a rifleman must have had the same system of recording shots on a target the same as we had. For example, when he had a bullseye, he put a big disc over the centre of the bullseye, and if he had a magpie, he put that at one side. If he had a miss, he moved his disc from one side to the other. And I remember on one occasion I went up there and there was an awful lot of sniping going on from both sides, and I was standing alongside one of the riflemen, and he was having a shot at a Turk who was evidently digging, oh, I suppose 50, 60 yards away, digging a trench. And the Turk was, every time the shovel came to the top, our soldier had a shot at it, you see, and the Turk, of course, decided to show our rifleman exactly how he was scoring. If he missed, he waved his shovel from side to side, and I think on one occasion he put a bullet through the middle of the shovel, and the Turk held the thing up and the shovel dead in the centre of the most. Well, good on you, Ozzy, you got a bullseye that time. So a brigade of us were sent down to Cape Helles to join the British, and the brigade that I was in, we were given a section of the front, in front of Curator, and I suppose it was one of the luckiest days of my life, I suppose, because when we attacked, I was wounded. I got a bullet in just under my left ear, and it came out of the top of my spine, and I was packed off by, wasn't actually taken on a stretcher, but I had to walk all the way back to the beach to get on a boat to take us to Alexander.
You know, the mud and trenches, straight to the trenches, and that was terrible. It was, I often wonder how it was they got such good food to us in the trenches. But sometimes when we were in the front line, we were 11 days before we had our boots, and that was the longest time without having a change of taking our puttees and boots off. We had very little water to wash with. We used to shave with our bit of some of the tea that was allotted to us. Like we didn't save enough hot tea to shave in, or I did anyway. It was a dreadful time. Just prior to the night I was wounded, I'd shifting machine guns for nearly 30 hours, and I was very tired. But they allotted me 2 1-gallon jars of rum to take with the stretcher. And I was that tired, I remember burying one, and I had the details in my diary where I buried it, thought I'd get it later. And but I was wounded, and so I suppose someone else has found the jar of rum. It was one of the amazing things that I can remember was to hang a blanket over the side part of our, and you know the bullets hit the loose blanket and they'd never go through it. Well, a lot I suppose would have direct fire, but the splinters of bombs and bullets nearly spent would just hit the blanket and fall down. Couldn't go through a loose blanket hanging. As a matter of fact, that last battle of Boyle, course, on that day that never reformed as a battalion again, they tell me their old Colonel Tivy, when after they were lined up and counted, he cried like a child. The number of casualties.
When I enlisted in 1915, I was 5 foot 6.5 tall, and I was 9 stone 11 pounds. And when we landed home on the Meadic on the 31st of May, a Saturday afternoon, I was in the second car. And of course, as the cars were loaded, they went down to the gates until everybody was off the ship. And I'm looking around, and down along the breakwater, about 100 yards along the road, I seen this fella climb up, jump down onto the sand, and walk down to the water's edge. My father had bunions on his feet, and he used to always walk at 10 to 2. I said, if that's not my father, I'll eat my felt hat. It was him. He come up to the pier, and he's looking around. When I went over to him, oh, he said, you're 60th Battalion. I said, yes. Of course, he'd got an eye full of my colour patches. He said, that's the Meadic, isn't it? I said, yes. He said, you wouldn't know a fellow by the name of Brain, would you? I said, no. I said, there was 1,500 men on that boat. I said, why do you know him? He said, he's my son. I said, how would I do for your son? Oh, he said, I suppose you'd be all right. He said, but I want my own son. I said, yeah, I suppose you do. I was there for a quarter of an hour talking to him, and he didn't know who the hell he was talking to. I pulled my pay book out. I says, can you read without your glasses? He says, I don't wear glasses, son. All right, I said, open that cover back. I said, and read out loud what you can see. Oh, he opened the pay book up. 2344. Yeah. Private. Brain. Thomas Ralph Tipton. He said, "You are my son." I said, "I knew that." I said, "I seen you jump over the wall and walk down there." But he didn't know me from a bar of soap.
You've been listening to the voices of World War I veterans from the Oral History collection at the Australian War Memorial. To hear their full interviews or read transcripts of the interviews, go to the Australian War Memorial's website at www.awm.gov.au and choose Collection Search.